last meeting for the Consortium of Cities for 2023. Thank you, everybody who has been engaged, who's been working, who's been sharing that information, etc. This is one of my favorite extracurricular activities as a commissioner of Boulder County. This group, the thought work, the interactions between meetings, the connections, and really great questions that we have moved this into a working group. So it's great to be here on site to be able to meet some folks and see how we can collaborate and where we want to be and what kind of preparation we can all do for an active disaster and disaster management. So we do have an agenda. There's some printed ones here for folks who are in the room that Mark's got, that are coming around. And for folks online, I know that got sent out too as well. If there's others that need it, just give me a signal and I'm happy to pass it around. So we're gonna do introductions here in a minute. That'll be your name, title, just so we know who's in the room, and we'll look to our screens too for folks who are meeting virtually. Who we want to know which parts of the region that you're in, so that we make sure that we follow up with folks who might have questions. We're talking about disaster and emergency management and planning this evening. We will have a very brief update, and I'm looking back to our esteemed Mike Charge here, because we do have another topic that we're going to need to talk about in regards to update on the regional minimum wage, and always try and save time for community announcements. I know there's a ton happening, and then we'll make sure, like I said, we adjourn. If we have an opportunity, we'd like to take a break in this meeting, and we're going to be moving around and talking and doing some discussion, etc. So we might not need that. So we're all adults. If you need a facility, get the facility. We have some snacks Mark brought, so don't be shy if you need to grab something. Take care of yourself. So I'm gonna, yes.
Maybe do just a quick technical check to make sure everything is working. So if you're in the meeting virtually, can someone please speak and then let us know that you can hear us?
I can hear you, but your Golden Gate background is obscuring your video.
So can we get rid of the background on the owl, Mike?
Thank you for that assistance.
Yes, thank you, Ari.
No worries. No worries. It should be on the ellipsis of your actual whoever is projecting the video, and
no background.
Change the background. There we go.
Okay. All right. Great. Thank you.
All right. So let's do introductions here in the room first. And this is not your stump speech, anyone. This is not your life story. We'll get to that in the conversation later, but really quickly, at least in the room. So I'm going to start down here at the very end.
Good evening, Dion Fenning, Director of Emergency Management for the City of Longmont.
Thank you.
Hi everyone, my name is Chris Campbell. I'm the Emergency Manager for the Boulder County Public Health.
I'm Jocelyn Bankhauser. I'm the Housing and Human Services Emergency Manager.
Being here.
Michelle Stinnett. I am the Recovery and Resiliency Division Manager.
Recovery and Resiliency Manager. Great.
I'm Chris Nostek. I'm the Deputy City Manager of the City of Boulder.
William Folker, Boulder City Council. Thank you.
Sean McCoy, Long West City Council.
Mark Rosen, Boulder County Commissioner's Office staff.
Jeff Durbin, Louisville City Manager.
Thank you.
Deb Fahey, Louisville City Council.
Thank you.
Holly Rogan, Mayor Brown.
Allison James, Disaster Preparedness and Recovery Manager for the town of Superior. Katie Emily, Trustee John Superior.
Thank you.
Monica Weber, Boulder Office of Disaster Management Coordinator.
Right, we're gonna hold on to this one for a minute. Yeah.
Who is
Who's online? Mark, I'm gonna get your help.
Troy.
Troy Hendricks, Town of Netherland Emergency Manager.
Aaron.
Aaron Kaplan, Director Utilities for the Town of Lyons.
Right.
Miranda.
Miranda Fisher, Town Administrator for the Town of Netherland.
Okay. Devin.
Devin Schaff, Mayor Pro Tem, Broomfield.
Ken.
Ken Lenarchik, Town of Jamestown.
Ari.
Now council member from Erie.
Okay. Sama.
Sama Fox, Deputy City Manager for Louisville.
apologize for the informality of the first names, but I'm just trying to do this quickly. Taisha?
Adams, Council Member-elect, Boulder City Council.
Great.
And Caleb?
Hey, Caleb Dickinson, Mayor Pro Tem Louisville.
And then Katie Dickinson is just arriving.
And Nicole Spear from Boulder City.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else we missed virtually? Right. Awesome. Thank you. And the reason why I was waiting here in the room, I just want to give a significant shout out and appreciation for Mike Chard. We got an opportunity to work together on a project I was doing for the state of Colorado at Todos before I was here at the county. And it's been about a year with Mike and his team on flood recovery and really talking about similar conversations about how do we prepare as a region. What does that mean to include all people in our community, from the mountains to the plains to English dominant and non-English dominant, status differentiated, and all the different folks who are part of our community. So I'm excited to be here with you and appreciate you and your style and your learning and your commitment. So I'm going to turn it over to you, and we'll try and watch the virtual piece in case there's questions. Go ahead and put them in the chat and we'll make sure we share them out. And folks who are in the room, this is all of our time together. So don't be shy with your questions as well.
Questions, dialogue during it is all welcome. Don't take that for it. So I'm going to try to move through the presentation pretty fast though, because I know a lot of things will come up. We're not here to do a 45-minute lecture. It's more about just giving you some context and get to the end state that we're trying to achieve today, and then get the discussion. Sure, we all do our job well. Hopefully, we will meetings about it, and we'll go from there. So, good evening. My name is Mike Chard. I'm the director with the Office of Disaster Management for the City of Boulder County. A little bit about that agreement. It goes back to 2005 in its history, and it's when the city and the county came together with the next day about how to combine emergency management offices, and it's gone through a few iterations and changes, most recently in 2022. Once we change our name to the Office of Disaster Management, the reason why is because every time we say we're for emergency management, they go, "What do you do?" We're in charge of the police and fire department, and of course, the police and fire chief is really accurate. So we're trying to, like all branding, you know, other departments have gone through rebranding in city and county departments, and we're trying to get the right name for the kind of work we do. It will be different for long run, perhaps, but I don't deal with 911 calls. That's what our 911 centers do. That's what our police and fire do a great job with, and our deputies. When it gets beyond that, that's when our office is activated, and this room comes into play. So if we can move over to the presentation, or before that, does anyone have any expectations for tonight's presentation? Because we are pretty agile in how we can present this, and we want to make sure that we hit the topics that are important to you. Does anyone have any expectations for tonight? No expectations. I can guarantee you, you're going to walk out of here extreme.
I mean, Mike, you introduced him. I expect a really big show, a really, really big show.
All right. Well, all right. We will entertain and educate at the same time and tee this up. And facilitate is really what I'm here to do. Not any more than that. So we can bring it up, we'll get going. And this is a thing we've done. We'll have other sessions coming up in the year as part of training. We've done this last year. We did this last year, and we had a whole panel of experts, SMEs from across the land here. And it went really well. It took like 2-3 hours, and we were able to have a lot of dialogue going back and forth. So we're going to continue that program that's really geared towards elected officials and senior leaders within the county special district government here in Boulder County. So be looking for that. This is sort of next. I have the slide before that, but actually drive. So the first thing I want to do, yes.
I just want to ask the virtual participants if you're seeing the slideshow.
Yeah,
We are.
Excellent. Great. So I'd like to begin with really some context around what is the difference between like an incident and a disaster. And the best way to describe it is that an incident is really caused by either human or natural causes, and it's smaller. Quite frankly, smaller. Many of these things are going to happen and be managed by our first responders and some mutual aid, perhaps, maybe sharing across agencies, things get handled. The impacts to the community are very narrower. Maybe it's, you have an apartment complex that has 20 people displaced, or some infrastructure is impacted, streets are closed for a period of time. Social networks aren't really disturbed yet. When we get into a disaster, these are going to be sudden. They're going to have a wider and deeper impact on the community. The resources that we have are going to be stripped right away. We will not have the resources in disasters that will be able to manage this. And the job of emergency disaster management is to then bring up a system beyond that and be able to surge in resources from either across the county, the region, and state and federal assets to come in and integrate into our disaster and be able to provide the critical crisis management needs and also address consequence management needs. Hear that term come up. And a lot of things is we as emergency managers are not telling police and fire and the sheriff's department where to go, what to do. We're supporting them. And then we're reacting to many things that happen, either because they made decisions, because the disasters make an impact in the community. And that's really how it can work and how the center works. And we'll talk about that. So really, what is disaster management? What I want to get to today in state is climate change, all the things that are happening in our county. Unfortunately, this means when I say our county, it's collectively municipality, special districts, and county. So we have the dubious honor of being one of the most active counties with disasters. Front Range, Parameter County, it's all the time. We seem to go back and forth. We have unfortunately been the worst wildfire disaster twice, and we now hold that distinction again, and hope that we can, be the last one that has to wear that, and that it becomes part of the history of Colorado, but never just see that again. But that's the thing with climate change, growth, the way we're building, hazards, risk is part of our community, especially along the Front Range counties. So the question kind of for tonight is the purpose of bringing you together here is a lot of times we have these disasters out of whether it's generosity, commitment, some formal agreements, it just impacts you, it's the right thing to do. And we respond through the crisis side of this and the recovery side of this. And then we go back and hopefully there will be a 2 or 3 year period or 5 year or 10 year period before we all have to share again. Unfortunately, that's not the case here. This county has had 1 month where we have not been in recovery or response since September. It was September 6th, 2010, when the 4 mile first started. There's been a recovery operation going on or some response. Now, response is a very small, narrow part of all that time. Michelle is in charge of recovery for the county. I handle it for the city, but that's just the guy I support him on it. Chris is really kind of the guys who are in the recovery stuff with the city. I do what he tells me to do to support him. But the point being is that recovery is the long range part of this, right? That goes on for years. And the thing that I really want to, show some gratitude towards and attribute to is many city, county, across our county, the staff that are in that mode. The first responders, in the state, they get a little easier once the crisis is over. They go through immense hardships during it, right? Risking lives or doing a lot of things, you deal with a lot. But there's also a lot that goes on after these things. And the same people that are doing the services on a day-to-day operation are coming into this building during the crisis side, and then they stop and they pivot and move right into recovery structure with all the same things that are being weighed upon them on the day-to-day operations. Truly heroic efforts. So our goal really is, on the crisis side, prevent the loss of life. And on the recovery side, it's prevent the loss of life and reduce human suffering. And we've seen that in recovery. The number of people that died, fortunately, in the disaster from the crisis side, it'll be 4 to 10 times worse than the recovery side. We've untimely deaths, mental illness that manifests, all these things. And this is what this whole recovery thing, the response part, that's our mission. Is really to not just build back the community and hold it together and not let the demographics change, but also to prevent loss of life. So the question is, as we look forward, we're going to have more, and they may be more intense disasters in our county and our cities. The question of the night to tease up is, are we in the right structure? Do we have the right agreements? Do we have the right capabilities in line for a sustainable future about how we stay prepared? Preparing the community, preparing our first responders, our response agencies, our crisis management agencies, and then being able to do this. Unfortunately, I believe we will have other opportunities. And the question is, are we in that right structure, the right relationships, the right agreements, the right capabilities to sustain that with a future that says we will have more climate impacts? will create more natural disasters. So that's kind of the reason really to bring it together is to start having this policy level discussion, because we as emergency management professionals, disaster management and recovery professionals, we carry out your will. We're looking for that policy direction to say, here's what I want done and how we need it done. And we're going to take our expertise to come back and say, here's the best options to think we can give you and the best rate. Can you advance the next slide? I'm lost. There we go. So our traditional model is around these 4 efforts. Preparedness, think of that real quickly as community preparedness. And also preparedness like training, exercise, making sure that people that are doing things are properly getting the experience, the practice, the craft, and making sure we're ready to go. The response side, obviously, is we call that the Guns and Hoses Club. That's where you have a lot of the first responder activity occurring, recovery becomes where now you transition out of this recovery structure. A wildfire generally 5 days to 2 weeks. Generally, we'll see the first responders are out in about 5 days. EOC is going until about 2-week markers. Then pick up the transition for a couple weeks after that. And we're looking for recovery professionals to work with you as the electeds and the senior officials to say, here's the longer-term recovery structure, and we hand it off. That kind of moves on forward until recovery is deemed completed. And then mitigation mission. Really what our office does is the custodian of the mitigation plans. We're really not the ones driving mitigation, but we support the mission of it. Many times the mitigation authority comes out of things like parks, floodplain management, parks and open space, natural land management, code enforcement, building codes. Those are the things that can actually help mitigate the effects of disasters and the effects of our community. Okay, next one there, please. Just to give you an idea of threats and hazards, this is from our multi-agency coordination group. Many of you have staff that are represented in that monthly meeting. We put together every month, and training, information sharing, relationship building. These were what they felt were the threats and hazards that we face in our county, with wildfire being the most critical, flash flooding, severe weather. So the more east you go, it's the severe hails, tornadoes. Weather Service had a banner year. It's the most warnings they put out for severe weather than any other year they've had, or something like 700 warnings went out. Generally, it's about 300 per year. Communicable diseases, as Chris can talk about, there's always certain things popping up in the community that could be a threat. And then, of course, the secondary hazards of interest that we have are those we see below. There's sort of human caused type of issues, cyber attacks, failure, all those things kind of fall out of the first responder world. You don't see them when we have cyber attacks or there's a public health emergency. That first response system is like, well, that's not our gig. So then what happens, the emergency management agencies get into more of a management structure as opposed to a support and coordination one. So we have to figure it out. We span a lot of different things. We're really not considered first responders, but we do it. So we're trainers, we're educators, we're facilitators, we're planners, we're mitigators, and then we're responders, and we have to do that all the time, and we're doing that 24/7, 365 throughout the year. So there's a lot of load on. I think everyone here is proud to be part of that enterprise. All those threats require core capabilities to respond to. And these just kind of show you we're doing some work with our county departments right now. We're working with the city to get this lined up for our city effort. Since COVID, there's been a tremendous shift in our capability. We've lost a lot of historical knowledge and experience. People who retired out or left our city or county departments. And the capabilities that we have just been kind of shifted around. So we're going back through and doing a lot of assessments of what we call emergency support functions. And those are the ESF you see at these desks. These are the coordination points connect to the city departments that we have across our land here. And their job is to then connect to the operational aspects of these capabilities. And then the core capabilities you see up there are all reflected within our ESF model, our emergency support function model that we have here in the EOC. You can see the difference though, the crisis management and consequence management side. The incident commander, the fire chief, or the battalion chief, or the police commander, when they evacuate people, they're deciding where the evacuations go. They're the ones that are calling out the evacuation areas. They're going to our 911 centers in the Longmont or the city folder saying, send this kind of message out. And then after that, they don't want to be dealing with it from that standpoint because you got to go back into other things. They're not worried about, are the shelters open? We have now animals being evacuated. What food does the llama need? Someone had to leave their home fast. They don't have their walker. They need an oxygen concentrator. They left their medications. This is where Jocelyn springs in and takes over the sheltering aspects of this and activates her management structure and delivers these capabilities. We may need transportation assets because folks that have mobility challenges. So we have folks from your transportation departments that bring assets in and we integrate them in with the first responders to be able to go in and get people that have challenges around mobility. So this just gives you an idea of some of the things that happen in the consequence management. So we're reacting off of the things that we're getting from information in the field or the things we're picking up out of dispatch. And then we're getting those capabilities activated and then they deploy and then they write it out until we mobilize the center. Then we move it over to recovery. Okay. Let's see, next slide, Mark. There's a lot of planning going on. So just for us here in our office, for the city county, I got 26 different plans plus that I have to manage. So we are constantly doing plans, and these plans require a lot of subject matter experts to come in. Some of these are centric to the county and city, but there are also many plans that we're inviting many of your law enforcement, fire, public works folks to come in and work with us on getting the right people in the room to be able to look at this county efforts. Once again, when we have a disaster, this is not a 911 call. It stays in your municipality. These things cross special district lines, municipal boundary lines, and the impacts affect us all. And if you don't have any direct impact to your city residents, many of the people that live in the county are living in various parts of the county, they're affected. So, for example, my wife has been evacuated 3 times. She has to do it all alone. A little funny story during the flood, though. She calls up and says, "She got an evacuation order. What do I do?" I said, "You did not just ask him. You've been prepared for this day." And she said, "Shut up. I need a husband, not the director of disaster management." Knowing the power she yields, I was immediately like, "Yes, dear, we'll get you there." Just so these impacts, these are people that have been working in this facility with their houses flooding, with their homes burning down, their families being evacuated, and they're staying on their post and they're doing the work. So truly heroic and admirable, employees that we have within the city county. But there are a lot of plans going on. So we're always in this mode of preparing, planning, responding, after action work, new capabilities, shifting hazards, new risks. We got to reevaluate capability assessments. This is our life in the world that we do. So we're kind of quiet. A lot of people think we're just Cheeto eating planners to just kind of, hang out in a room and write plans, but we're out in the community a lot and doing a lot of things. So it's really kind of an interesting line of work. There's 3 real areas of emphasis that we have around the way response occurs. Incident command is the first layer of this. So this is when you see someone say, "I'm in command." It's very much a command and control environment. We like to say it's the 4-finger world. These are the people that are going, "I need you to move your car over there right now. You got it." We're more of the, "Whoa, hey, what's going on? How can we help you?" sort of world. But that's a very smaller scope. It's a very operational focus. But then if these things grow larger, now these things are going beyond an operational period, we call that. That could be 6 hours, 12 hours. Now there's a need for managing this thing. It's not just about commanding the operations side. Now you got to think about planning and supporting. And that's where then the incident management system gets put out. A lot of command and general staff positions. Not just focusing on telling people to move around on the scene. And then when that gets stretched, then it moves into this disaster management world where now it's crisis and consequence management, wide area of impact. We have everything lit up. We're doing all kinds of things across the lines. We have policy level, strategic level, operational level going on. So that's kind of the areas of emphasis that happens as these things move from incident into a disaster. And sometimes this whole thing can happen here with these winds. We'll see us go through these phases in literally an hour without a need for me to open up. So we move pretty fast. We're not like the hurricane coming in. I had a conversation to report today. What's the difference between evacuating here versus like a hurricane? Hurricanes coming in, you see it a couple of days out. We have something that pops right next to a community, and you get 30 minutes before it's getting into the built environment. An entirely different model of how you evacuate the scale from the temporal and spatial scale. Don't need to go into that. We'll keep moving through that, Mark, if you can. And this starts out our 911 centers, trauma, Boulder and the county are all the 911 receive the calls. They take a ton of stuff. They get really work hard because they've got everyone calling in when they see things. On top of that, they're supporting the pushing out resources out of their dispatching, their computer-aided dispatching system. And then they're doing all the alerts. So what they get is a lot of people who, I got a question. So we open up a call center now, and it decompresses the amount of stuff that's coming in to 911 kind of opens them up for their critical capacity. Next slide. Here's the command structure. This is what we do. We provide a lot of training. Dan and I and our staff are certified in training this. So we get people together and run the training. We do these a couple of times a year to keep this going. So, but this is the structure that they use to set up. Looks pretty much like an org chart. It's really what it is. It's a business, or it's a management by objectives model for how to manage disasters. And it's common. We're in NIMS County, which we were since 2004. So it means we have to have structure management, resource management, information with the community. There's a lot of standards around that I won't worry with. But this is how then they set up the structure. And the challenge here is then what happens if everyone's not together? So in the flood, there was 14 incident command structures we were trying to hold together here out of this office, out of this building. During the Marshall Fire, how we moved from that, our first responders are more in the sort of moth the light. They want to get together and unify their command structures. Easier support, helps with cross-jurisdictional decision making, and helps with efficient use of resources. Next slide. Jump in any time here. I'm just blabbing away. So,
what does NIM stand for?
thank you. We use acronyms, and please patch me. But I'm not the one who does it. I went to an IT meeting the other day and I was lost for like the first 30 minutes to it. All the acronyms. Whatever percent, yeah. So yes, it's the Natural Incident Management System. It was passed many years ago, and it's just a way to try to standardize across our country how we respond. So we're bringing resources in from other areas outside of our community. There will be some standardization and understanding of how things are set up. This is our EOC structure, and on the right we have what's called an acronym CRISP EOC, and that's basically our mission set. Those are the things that we're focusing on here to be successful. And we are a staff of, as you saw, Francesca Gonzalez is not here. She's our admin officer and our call center manager. But there's 5 of us. We're not going to run a disaster with 5. They all have friends. They got a lot of friends down there, and we use our networks and swell that up. So without everyone in this room for the emergency management in Boulder County, this would be impossible. And then without all the city and county departments that that surrender, they support us with staff. Part of these ESF here, but then also train the people out there that are actually doing work. This force Boulder multi-agency coordination. And last I checked, just a number, we have a system we track people that are in that. There's over 700 profiles in it to give you an idea of the size and scale of just the local resources here outside of the first response. Next slide. Keep going with the mission area stuff. We'll move through that. Johnson, we want to talk on this, but what happens is there's an incident command post out there, which is an incident command system. And then if we're just doing purely our ESF type stuff, we're support coordination. Johnson may be here as an ESF 6 rep or have someone here, but then behind that, public health is also Chris. They run DOCS, which stands for Department Operations Center. John is working with Louisville County creating a doc for that. City Boulder will set up a doc. And this is where your operations get centered to be able to make decisions for your community about how you work. And we might have interface with incident commanders. There might be a rep in law enforcement or fire in that. And then if there's things that need more peels back into the EOC, something that's more focused purely on mass care. And it's another structure that kind of has like a EOC flavor to it on one half, but also an incident command flavor on the other side. Want to add, Chris, or draw around doc use for anything purpose?
I would just add to put it in perspective, there are 130 county and city employees that I help to keep trained here just to support sheltering and volunteer and donations management along with the disasters. And those are all people that it's their day job, they have something else. They're volunteering to help within this structure. And they volunteer.
In other counties, department heads don't want that. The disasters hit, find themselves with the gap. So that's one of the, we are definitely very rich in that area with this support. Okay, working now. So that's kind of your response structures. The first question for everyone here is, you know, what is your response structure within your municipality? And is it the way you want it? Now, I'm not just talking about police and fire stuff, I'm talking about those other sides. Your target public works, what do you do when you have an infrastructure failure? Or it's damaged because of a flood or a fire? And how is that moved? How do you manage it? That's the first piece of it, right? Having that sort of response structure properly set up. But then the next question is what happens when that response structure gets taxed? Where do you turn? And that becomes the next hard question because that gets into you have an EOC. Do you have the ability to start managing this from your municipal perspective? You want to go alone in that journey, or you're looking for something that's more integrated, more multi-agency? And those are the hard questions for elected officials or senior leadership to figure out. And many times what happens is we see it across everywhere is it becomes other duties as assigned. So if someone missed a meeting and now you're the emergency manager for municipalities. But under state law, disaster management or disaster law, CRS, the county commissioner is responsible for providing disaster response and recovery for Boulder County. But municipalities have an equal responsibility unless by agreement it has been transferred to another entity. So that's where the pickle becomes. A lot of people think, oh, we're the county OEM by name, but municipalities have the choice to say, well, no, we do our own thing. So like with Longmont, they have a very excellent program. They run their program. We have a relationship with them. It's not like, how'd you put it today? How'd you put it, independent but not isolated or something. So that's the sort of relationship we have. So I know Deanne's got it. I don't worry about his preparedness work. We're not doing that in the community. We're not doing the training exercise. If Longmont gets hit, then I'll say, Michael, we're at a point we need the RDSC strapped. And then I'm going to turn to my board. And my board is made up of Janet Peterson, County Administrator. Maria is our City of Boulder City Manager. It's made up of the Sheriff and the Police and Fire. That's my board. So I turn to them and I go, well, am I looking for help? What are my directions? And they'll say, open checkbook. All services are there from the city and county to help Longmont, or they'll say, find more out, see what they need, we've got back and forth, and this is the policy sort of discussion it is. So we're making these agreements on the fly with no real prior understanding what that looks like. So that's what I want to kind of elevate. Is that okay? That's how we do it just in time. Okay. If there's something more formal around that, then that's something that probably should have some discussion to it moving forward to see how we want to structure that as the whole collective. Guarantee you this. Nice to know that when Boulder City hit, like City of Boulder, and we have 20,000 people that are moving, and we've got our infrastructure being tapped and stretched, that I could call Deanne up and say, I'm gonna need some rec centers. I'm gonna need some transportation resources. What's your public works got? Because ours is really overwhelmed, and we can move them up the diagonal, or vice versa. Or move them into, I need Louisville's, rec center for something. These are the pieces that when you have disaster, it takes a whole community to handle and share in, be able to serve that life safety that's suffering this mission. And then recovery gets in a whole nother thing that will tee that up. So it doesn't just stop there at the end of the need of thing where that goes. We have a transition to recovery plan now. It helps Michelle get a little tighter bundle of what recovery is going to look like. Sort of here it is, just bunch boxes with notes and that kind of thing. It's really designed so that we move out of our support and coordination structure in our office to a management. Don't think of it as like command and control, think of it as disaster management. We're now managing these operational pieces that are life safety and all those sort of things. And we keep it in a planning process, keep supporting logistically, documentation and communications, joint information with the public, policy group management, while she is building a recovery structure. And she says, we're go, or Chris would say, we're go for recovery, and then now we're shutting down. Then move the recovery up profile. This is an example of recovery structure on the Marshall Fire that was set up. When that got set up, then we demobilized. Okay, and remnants of that still, I think, are in place. All right. We're gonna burn down part of the county. Hope it doesn't accomplish anyone, but we're going to try to demonstrate very quickly with this fishbone. And what we do in an annual disaster is we do this more intentional. We have like literally 13 experts plus at a table up there. We have go out in the community, we start popping these things up, and each one of them you get to dive into and ask your questions and really get down and deep dive with it to understand it better. So I'm not able to do that time with a time. But what I want to get to here is to show you this is how disaster unfolds and then recovery. So we'll move through it. The incident occurs. This is obviously out east, so Erie and Lafayette are impacted by this one. This is a grasslands incident. We're working really closely with the CWP work going on out there. And we really have identified now that the part of the county, basically what east of 36 has a different risk profile than the west. The grasses, they cure out every winter. And depending on the volume of them and how they are, get some drought, put winds on it. And the National Weather Service run a wind study from the county. The profile is 40 to 50 mile an hour winds with gusts 3 to 4 times per hour, going 60 to 70 miles an hour straight line, west to east. That's the stuff that burns us down. The further data on that shows that most of these winds are occurring out of 39 high wind and red flag warnings that we had. They're occurring between September and April every year. And of the 9 of the 11 most devastating fires we've had, 9 occurred during that time. So that's the profile. I've got some things in the works of how we can manage that. Some investments we've had in technology about evacuations, how to manage conflagrations. There's just a new report out that said the urban conflagration is back. Before it was considered like smallpox eradicated out of the modern urban environment because of codes, modern fire protection, capabilities, water supply. That's not the case. We're seeing this resurgence of this, and now it's a new thing. We're coming up with a conflagration management plan next for our EOP. Start addressing that. I think we have some ways to meet. But this is this environment. We have a high wind warning coming up tomorrow till Thursday. 50 mile an hour winds, steady state, gust to 70. The Weather Service, they get hit all the time for not being accurate. They're accurate in their forecasting on this as far as the data. So the plus side about tomorrow is we haven't had 6 months of drought, so I don't want anyone to freak out. Okay, we've also done some things that have changed. Part of that after action work we've done since Marshall Fire, we worked with a lot of our first responders supporting them. They don't have the ability to do some advanced planning because they're dealing with the everyday stuff. We bring that in. We're able to work with them to help facilitate them, get to what's called industry-based dispatching. Where on tomorrow, if it is high winds, drought, it will go to a high industry-based response, dumps the system. Change the way that we get on this stuff earlier to try to knock the fires down and control. So here's how it goes down. Keep this in mind when you're looking at this. This is going to happen to your community, whether you're in Erie, Louisville, Lafayette, City of Boulder, Netherland, just scale and size, depending on your infrastructure makeup, the demographics of your community. And it starts off with a high wind, starts getting a fire, it's in some light fuels. 911 center is going to get the phone call. The first responders are going to get out there pretty quick. They're going to set up an incident command structure. They're going to size it up really quickly, see what they need. They're then going to in a box. They call this the box. This is their containment effort, their strategy. We're going to hold it to this box. Is there a lot in that box that makes you nervous? Absolutely it does. But remember, these are disasters. They're not emergencies anymore. These are things that have got characteristics around that are going to be high impacts. And they're going to have some lasting effects in the community. And this is why it's important to be prepped for them. The incident command is set up down there. So we'll set up a command post and start putting command and control over the top of it. And then PIO will usually PIO gets going, they'll start tweeting things out. Over scale, saying here's where the fire is, here's what needs to happen. They'll call for mutual aid resources because they're not going to be able to contain this kind of weather. The fire is going to start expanding. They'll be reacting to those sort of fire conditions. They're going to move fast. As we saw on the planes, because they're flashing fuels. There may be a delegation of authority. This is something to be comfortable with. Trips people off when they hear this, especially if lawyers are in the room. Because they're like, we are not delegating our authorities to municipality or special district. We're not. It's a bad term. It comes out of wildland world. It's really you're delegating responsibility to things that still work for you. So if you hear that term, don't freak out about it. If you need clarification about it, talk to your emergency manager, give me a call and explain it. And also find out what do you need in that to make you a lot more comfortable with it. Because it's all about getting out what you need and getting that into the delegation so the responding agencies know how to carry out your directives. Alert warning starts getting punched out. We've been putting a lot of enhancements on our alert warning system. So we are going to be blowing alerts all over the place with the wireless emergency alert, the iPod system, our Everbridge system. We've made advancements in app technology called Reach-Well for translation. So we have to get our alerts. If someone signs up for these alerts, they can then receive the alert in over 100 languages, their language of choice, to help them understand it. We receive feedback about mapping and messaging. Yes.
I just want to acknowledge the folks online, and there's a couple comments. One from the Erie trustee Harrison. We've actually brought up this type of situation in our board meetings, but the other ones, just so that it's mine.
Yep.
We have concerns about the fracking locations that are located in that block. Okay, at some point we can address that. Thank you.
Yeah, that's great to do. So what I would say is, for the fracking piece, that's part of our impact assessment. So what we have is our impact assessment team, when we activate, they come online. They have what we call a situational awareness system tool that brings up an Esri platform for mapping, and the data layers that are in that become how we see it. And then if the first responders are getting that information back that we have sites, then we become aware of them and we'll contact the oil and gas companies issues with. But that would be a problem because you do have flammable liquids. If they're impacted by fire, obviously that can spread. I do know that one of the parts of the fracking operations, they have to maintain mitigation around these sites to prevent the flashing fuels from hitting them. The plus side of these flashing fuels, remember, they move fast. But if we can reduce the size of the flame, meaning lower the fuel, active fuel available to burn, and that will slow down the speed and the intensity of the fire and give us better chances of not having the infrastructure elements being affected. Okay. A great question. You can dive into that more. I appreciate people bringing those out. This is kind of the box of first response. That's what's happening in this first 4 to 6 hours of disaster. After that, we start getting into a greater size of things. We have the UC gets activated. We have to have staff in here within an hour of being notified. We're not going 24/7. So we're home. We have a new staff in people, only in the county. So we have to have phones within an hour and have to be notified 30 times 30 situation awareness. At the second hour, we have to have 4 activated. Various ESFs that are important, like public safety, ESF 15, our TIOs, public works, transportation. They can also get notified. We're all coming in, they're activating their systems, and then by hour 3, we have to have a full activation up and going. When all the ESFs that are needed are up and rolling. In 3 hours is pretty good. It sounds long, but it's what we're bringing up. It's not fast. But when you have a fast moving incident, like a flash flood or something, there's a lot of things happening today. You know, it's a race for time. After that, we have the ODM board gets notified the minute we get activated, and I give them a briefing of what's going on, and we start identifying what other areas of impact that we may have, so we can get the initial policy group people in there. I make sure they're in unified command if need be, and if not, then it's hard to force it if they're not in it. So how do I need to help them stay connected? We have multiple jurisdictions with a command structure, one here. Struggle. We do our best to try to keep people. People are not out there doing their thing going, gosh, I wonder if Mike's got all the information. They're more worried about what's in front of me, not what's happening in the rear. But at some point, that connection starts to get better as we move down the line of this. We get ESF notifications going out. They start coming in. The core activation goes. The IMT3, we have an incident management team here in the county, which helps at that incident management level. Then you have a community control, they're kind of at that operational things. But then you need this management section. You can bring them in. They help deal with the multiple operational periods. We get legal involved. So contact county attorneys, city attorneys. Okay, we need disaster deck, we need ordinances written to be able to shift ourselves, to be able to better respond, to deal with the issues at hand. We'll get a disaster declaration signed, Marta will get a disaster to sign off, or maybe it's the principal officer of the municipality or county will then sign off on it. That then doesn't guarantee you're getting reimbursed. Everyone thinks I get a disaster deck and the state and the feds are gonna pay for it. No. Disaster deck just means now we can change the way we govern to be able to make decisions in a disaster, to serve the community and open up access to funds. Get over procurement, we don't have to do competitive bid, we can say we need it, buy it, those sort of things. So it just shifts a lot of the things that we do normally in government away from that procurement. Here we get call center going. I'm gonna start moving through these. The docks are opening up out there. Meanwhile, this thing is still growing. We get state delegation, some help may come in. Because with emergency fire fund, we pay into that, so that gives us reimbursement opportunities. Maybe getting some FEMA funding through what's called an FMAG, a Fire Management Assistance Grant, and that will pay or help reimburse part of the operational expense. Yes.
Another online question, what is the communication channel with BVSD as it relates to Meadowlark K-8 EVAC if it is during a school day?
Yeah, great question. So I have an ESF for Boulder Valley and Savory School District and CU, and that ESF gets contacted. And we held meetings after the Marshall Fire because we were fortunate that we didn't have school in session. So what we met with Savory, we actually held some evacuation exercises with Savory Valley. PDSD felt that they were good with it. We're going to do more of this, but they have been, both of them have doing a ton of work looking at their response structure and how they're managing schools being in session. And what came out of that was a lot of the mental models around we're going to have to evacuate kids. How do you get buses in when the roads clog and can't? So how do you defend yourself? Shifting to that model of we need to be able to be both. So, and then the other part of that is how do we integrate better into the incident command structure? So we've got all our incident commanders in here. We've got BVSD, Green Valley, working on what channels can they have access to? How do we get you connected to the incident commanders so you know what the real threat is for the school, because they're getting the same alerts you are. That's saying evacuate, 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 and they're calling for buses, and buses are trying to get in. So these are the complication factors. The same thing we do with hospitals, long-term care centers, any congregate care center, day surgery, all these things come into play and are part of that evacuation plan. So we're having, now we've got the infrastructure really where we want it. We're having additional planning sessions. Monica has been doing a lot of work with the Center for People with Disabilities. She's getting access into the human services agencies across the county to try how to leverage preparedness. Because what we're finding is we need to really shift the way we're preparing the community. You have to take action on your own. Because in disaster, you just don't have resources to get a bus to everybody as a mobility issue. And the conversation we're having today with the reporter was, what is the pedestrian model for preparedness? And I said, we're gonna have to we're checking for bugs now, because we were actually having this discussion 3 weeks ago about we need to have now a preparedness, pedestrian preparedness model for the communities. So she's working on that. So we'll be mapping some strategies around that and how to work it. It's great funding, so thank you for the funding. That's been going now. We are going to supercharge our preparedness programs and be able to really get out in that space and push it. But it's also about leveraging with our communities, connectors. We're working with those groups within the city and county and find how do we get access to groups in our community, residents in our community that otherwise aren't represented. Not us carrying it, but how do we get the message to them? How do we translate all of preparedness information? How do we get in the hands of people who have the relationships that are trusted, they can carry it forward and expand our message of preparedness? Get people signed up for alerts and know what to do when they get on board. And that's what our 2024, I think we're going to make probably historic movement from when we were working together. We're going to be really happy with the things that we're going to be making ground on with putting that. The end of the first day, shelters are opened up. We're done for their first day. And either we get to go home at like 12 o'clock at night because things are working well, our staff and I, we all go back in our rooms and sleep next to the filing cabinet for 4 hours or 2 hours and come back out and we go at it again. And everyone's kind of, doing what they got to do. The next day opens up. We're still continuing with the department capabilities that we need to handle this thing. We have our check up and going really good by the end of that first operational period. We're starting to develop really good situation awareness. We know what's happening. We know where the impacts are. We're able to start getting that mission assigned. We're calling in for a lot of resources.
Again, JIC.
Joint Information System or Joint Information Center. So what happens is the alerts go out. Everyone starts going to boulderodm.gov as our blog site, and they're looking for information. They're calling the call center. They're hitting that. They're saying, "Where's the shelter? Where do I find information? When do I get back home?" All these kind of things come up. How do we message? Get all the PIOs that are operating brought under a system, and usually it's managed out of this corner right here. And it may involve many of your PIOs. And the gist is remote. The gist would be a system. And it's to say, hey, here's the messaging. We want to make sure this is going out. It's not working against each other. And we will be working against each other early on. It just happens. It's sort of fog of the disaster. But we want to tighten that up by the second operational period. Really have the intentional set where we're calling briefings. We're bringing people in. Here's the messaging for the day, where the problems you're having in your community. How do we get information resolved? Any conflicts of that? And really try to tighten down our variance and the messaging. Let's see here. We have impact assessment. It's really getting tight now. We're starting to think about damage assessment teams out in the field. Agency administrator meetings are being held by that second operational period. We're going to say who needs to be in it, and it's going to be usually affected communities. And then we're going to, I'll AG take on policy group management, and then that's designed to make sure that agency administrators are getting briefed on the impacts, the needs. But we want to make sure everyone, even if you're not impacted, we want you to know about it. You have resources that can be critically valuable that can help with the response and recovery. So we start doing the agency administrative cadence, get the GIS mapping going. The federal IMT may finally arrive within 1 to 3 days. If it's a wildfire, we can bring in teams to help with managing this. And we'll get city finance, county finance going, procurement cards, rules we listed, so we can buy the things we need to be able to keep things used with capabilities. The recovery team is usually notified, if not already there, at some point, and we start thinking about demo transitioning out and bringing that, and then of course getting community here. And this is the folks that are going to the shelters, they're listening to social media, the connector relationships. Are we hitting the service area needs of our community and seeking those out and trying to find out where we're having gaps and resourcing that properly?
I know in the Marshall Fire, we were briefed in Longmont, I think, in regards to people thought, they started media about where's Longmont doing that right thing, and it couldn't be earlier because there was one incident or somebody various town while our police and fire were over.
Yeah, you'll get that. So here's the problem. The minute people know we're in a disaster, folks that aren't here that are just heroic at the cyber teams that have in our IT departments, they are watching our six like go to bar, and there are bad actors trying to exploit the vulnerabilities that we have. You'll have people that will try to do criminal activity, things like the worst of people down trying to do the right thing, but then people trying to create those resource gaps. They can do things. You have to be careful with that. That's that policy decision. Message. Yes, all those sort of things, like the stuff emergence, all of that. Criminal behavior, even person recovery, you got people gaming folks all over the place. And they're just exploiting people and taking advantage of folks. And that's part of the recovery initiatives, getting the messaging out about how to look for predatory practices and all the folks they're doing. But we found people that they got a bulldozer off a contract in Arapahoe County during the flood. They were running around making big money saying, "Oh, my chart said I have authority to be here and I'm driving in one morning late." You get that person in the back of a cop car and bring him down to the EOC, because I need to talk about it. And it sure as heck we found a guy who forged a resource request, does this all disasters, and was getting a dozer. He didn't even know he was charging FEMA like $250, $300 an hour driving around plowing roads. And he got sent away. That's a response. That's what happens there. So recovery. Generally 5 days, no more than 2 weeks. As a response. I think the longest wildfire response we have just right around 6.5 days. The flood, when we talk about the Life Safety Mission, that was done in 4.5 days. But the consequence management stuff is going on high intensity for another couple of weeks until we can get to the recovery structure. So we'll generally be pulling this for a while. Like in the Marshall Fire, we were activated for 30 days. The DOC, and they were already back in the station, running hose and doing their things and get back to normal. That's just the tempo. And then, and it's the same, it's the same people that are in response. And all of a sudden, we're getting ready for recovery. And then the system is saying, now we need to go to long-term recovery after just doing the response. So this is the sort of stuff that your employees are doing, which is pretty heroic work around that. We'll move through this on the recovery side so you can see what happens here. And jump in here, folks. I'm sorry, this was a tornado. In case you want to do a tornado, it's the old hazards one. I think the thing I want to highlight on this one really fast before we move off it, jump through these, is that there are reimbursement structures in wildfire that are not in these events. This requires you to get a presidential declaration, which is a higher threshold in order to get that FEMA declaration. But in the wildfire world, there's state funds and there's federal funds that are easier to access, get reimbursement out of. So just keep that in mind. Anything other than wildfire, it's really a lot on the backs of local communities to pay for the response. And that can then impact budgets. You should know that well. Once we have the flood, we need to do a recovery tax that would be able to generate revenue to be able to build back infrastructure that otherwise we wouldn't be able to do. So anything on recovery, Michelle, you like to throw this kind of slide, or anyone else? Deanna, anything about recovery for Longmont? Anything you want to? Deanna? Anything? Let's run through the fishbone and see where it goes and answer questions. Okay, let's do that. So this is the footprint afterwards. So law enforcement is the next group that hangs around. I'm sorry, is that?
I was also trying to be cognizant of time.
Yeah, okay, we'll keep rolling. We're not done. So this is like the finish here, cross finish line. Law enforcement still has an issue about private access control. You'll see this after. If people want to get back to their neighborhoods, now you got people want to go in and loot. Looky-loos, violate people's right to some privacy as they start the healing process. So law enforcement is holding roadblocks at this point. We start getting into the recovery operation. EOC may be open for about 2 weeks or more. Site access controls out there. You start getting damage assessment teams walking through, and this is critical. Our damage assessment teams do really great work. We're known for it to where they just take the data, beam it out, and goes, it's good, and we get a declaration that fast. So the actual state crisis track model they're using for now, a whole state, was built here in Boulder. So and that Chris was part of that. So great work there. The shelters are still going on, and surprisingly enough, we don't get a ton of shelters. The Marshall Fire is probably our greatest shelter. Like 800 people or something. We're getting like 30, sometimes 10, because people are going to their networks and they're using their friends, families, others, maybe even buying hotels, whatever. Shelters are working. They're going to start working on emergency housing. The disaster assistance center is open. Sometimes it's kind of linear. You'll see this going the right opposites while we're still in the operational phase. We'll start working to set that up. This is where people are going for wraparound services to get emergency support and kind of speed up insurance to get set up there, behavioral health, the county HHS services. People need food assistance, housing assistance, all those programs. Anything you want to throw in there about that at all?
Sometimes the shelters are still open at the same time that we're going back up and running. And sometimes not. Sometimes we wait until the shelters are closed in order to adapt. Just depends on.
We get a check open up or just now it's still there, but now the completely changed. We have departments that are more engaged in the recovery than the response, so they're kind of taking that role on. We've got volunteer disaster management. We got some great folks that work in this space. We don't want people emptying their closets out. The spontaneous donation centers are horrible. We did this in the flood or 4 Mile, and it was, oh my God, what do we do? So we're like, no, let's get the right message. So the Community Foundation becomes our front of right now is help with that disasters with the financial aspect of donations, which is really helpful. And being able to have that lead into that volunteer donation management piece. Public meetings will start being scheduled, so community engagement will get there. Debris becomes a major issue. How you manage that? We're working on updating our debris plan right now. The health and safety side becomes really important. Air quality, asbestos, water, environmental impacts, all these things are being assessed. Unmet needs assessment. What are people falling? Where the safety nets that aren't catching people? How do we address them? Department capabilities are being realigned because we're moving now from response to recovery. And then sometimes they're even having to shut down services because they don't have the ability to provide normal services. So while they're also doing these response and recovery, so you're scaling back maybe a little bit on what you're doing. Recovery team sets up the structure. We get into that profile. The policy team for recovery gets going. They start having to make some hard decisions on budget and what level of how much we're going to do things. We get into our the docs get set up, and a lot of times people are running recovery from their business structures as opposed to like running a command structure out of this for recovery long term. And legal will be advising. The declaration may be updated or ended. The recovery officer is going to get involved and offer a ton of support and be able to answer all the questions. What we cringe about all the time is someone comes out and says, we're going to build back stronger and we're going to make you whole. When I hear that, I just cringe because guess what happens in about 90 days? People discover they're not getting whole and they're discovering insurance gaps and now they're struggling and where's the money? I told I was going to be made whole. You all said, and these are the things that get said. And fortunately, recovery folks then have to deal with that. And many times that anger and angst comes out. And so the folks have to do a lot of work and be pretty tolerant and supportive and empathetic. Yes.
Another online question is how often are maps updated? I ask only because old maps will not show completely new developments that are in the process of being built or completed that are not shown. Asking to enable proper assessment of populations impacted new roads, etc.
I don't have an answer for that, but I'll get it. I'm not the authoritative person on our GIS team would be able to answer that. And of course, I don't know if anyone else from the city county knows what they updated, but they are updated. They just don't know what time scale.
Okay.
But we'll get that answer.
Thank you.
You bet. Natural resources are engaged. We're looking at open space impacts. Every disaster we have has had an impact on our open space or parks and open space infrastructures. So that's going to be part of it. Case management long-term gets established. Public health assessments are occurring. Finance cost recovery is becoming a challenge. So now you're looking at long-term impacts. So now this is about dollars, especially if there's no reimbursement money coming in. COOP, just put a shout out for COOP, continuity of operation plan. In the flood, we had 22 county facilities impacted by flood. They're in here and FEMA's like, oh, geez, sorry, you can't get reimbursed for that. You don't have COOP plans. I was like, oh, contrary, Jared, come over to our radio system and see what everything is on COOP plans. Like, oh, I don't have to get recovered. Right. So without that, we would have lost money that it took to repair and move and all that stuff. So it's amazing FEMA trapdoors you discover of what's reimbursable and not. So having that expertise.
When I served on council in 2007 to 2011, we had to go through a training like this to do that. But then when I came on and last year and then now, I don't know where they're going to be with the election, but to make sure that we are able to access some of this insurance, do we have to have a type of training? Is that what you're talking about?
So I think what we're trying to get with our now new disaster for elected officials and for for department heads is to prep this kind of stuff so it makes you aware of what you need to focus and then make that part of the training exercise. So we constantly do COOP training with our department heads. We update our plans every year. We make sure they're there. We have Ryan Airy, who's a resource in the county. He is a FEMA killer. So he is clawed back from FEMA when they've taken away. His last success was $40 million. He moved 30?
38.
30, okay, well, she's the accurate one. I'm sort of the ish guy. So it's good to have recovering people that are really accurate. And in my role, I'm more like, it's kind of a dartboard, So you can see why we self-select our professions here. But Ryan, the 38 million. So FEMA has this nasty habit of they award it to you, they give it to you, then they do audits and they come back years later and people have left and you're forgetting, oh, sorry, you didn't quite, you don't have the proof. But Ryan kills it. So that would be someone that, having that kind of level of expertise on staff within our recovery is really advantageous. I'm assuming he'd be available for consult for anybody that wanted to know more about it, because we are blessed to have that level of expertise here in the county.
Just really quick to be clear, consult only.
Yeah. No hiring by myself.
Well, if we talk about how we integrate all this stuff, maybe everybody else. Everyone's a little bit, is kind of, planning and zoning things will change, especially for building back. How do you help people build? So you have to maybe adjust. This is a policy council decision will come up. You'll feel that recovery coordination. with other and operational teams still maybe happening out there. So, you know, Michelle will be working on that. You'll get FEMA PA programs in there, public assistance. Yeah, Jeff.
If this is a good stopping point, I want to go back a couple points. Elected officials, a lot of times when I see elected officials sit in these kind of conversations, you feel like you need to know all of this. And when I think about it, we have so many experts in this room and in our organizations that do this stuff. Elected officials, you shouldn't feel like, in my mind, that you need to be the experts in this, but awareness and thinking about the money and thinking about the training and thinking about making sure the resources are there, I think is important. And then I also wanted to, can you go back one slide without the, okay. So I just wanted to make two
There's a lot of fishbone stuff.
Okay, so 2 points. In the Marshall fire, we lost 5 of my key employees lost their homes. Yeah, there you go. Thanks. And about 27 employees were displaced with smoke. So a lot of our key employees were out. And that's something to think about as an organization. And I just wanted to, I don't know, thank you, Mike, or maybe not, my new deputy city manager. 3 months in, just bought a home in that black area. So she's sitting here texting me saying, I don't know about this job anymore. So
just to put everyone in, there's not a square inch in the United States that doesn't live with the risk.
Yeah.
So we all live with risk.
That's supposed to put us at ease.
So that's what we get paid for, is wake up every morning and go, what's going to hit us today? And live in that space and then try to get the systems and everything built. But yeah, the highlighting the point is that it's everywhere. So this is where mitigation, mitigation is the key here, folks, not response. For every dollar we spend on mitigation, according to the Human Mitigation Office, we're saving $10 in response. More importantly, how many lives are we saving? How many lives are we not having impact? How many folks that are on the fringe economically with all the things that happen are we preventing? The impacts it has to housing costs, all the things that are constant pressures, we call this, we call them stressors of our community that are there all the time. And then we have a disaster, it exacerbates them tenfold. And they come ripping open and they tear up in the community, and then people shift and we lose members of our community. And that's how do we hold it intact? And that's really what I learned about recovery. That's the mission, right? How do you hold that community fabric together? Because there's so many forces pulling apart. We see people that have never rebuilt from the former part. And the number and the how we rebuild, all those things. So we got a lot of planning efforts going on CWPP right now and looking at our communities differently and how we can mitigate better so that we don't have these impacts. We're going to have impacts. We're going to unfortunately lose property, but let's not lose lives. Let's not lose the community fabric. And that's where mitigation pays off tremendous.
yeah, and just building on this a little bit more, I think a part of that point, and maybe jumping ahead because I tend to do that, is that in a situation like this or others, you know, you lose key employees. And while we think of ourselves as maybe larger organizations or smaller organizations, I think, to your point, the questions you were asking earlier, this having redundancies, having relationships, having connections, having formal understandings, I think is something that I'm really passionate about us having a conversation about, because I feel like we've done really well with all the disasters we've had and all the experts we've had, but I feel like we could be better positioned going forward. I really do.
All those capabilities, thanks for that, Jeff, is that he's up kind of our closing here, is you're probably like, oh my God, all those things are going to happen in your community. All those fishbone elements, those are what your community are going to have to deal with in response to recovery. The question is, how are you positioned to handle that? You want to do it alone? You want to do it together? Those are simple, it's a simple question with a hard answer, right? Because you can say yes or no. Yes, okay, what does it look like? No, okay, good luck to you. How's that look? So there's peril on both sides of that. The challenges there. The plus side though is that all those things we know how to build capabilities with it if we have policy and senior leadership support. Bring the people to the meetings that we ask to have capability discussions around, because we have a way, we're doing this right now with city and county departments, of asking questions. What are you required to do in the EOP, the emergency operations plan? What are those capabilities from our thyroid? Shannon is our thyroid expert, and training expert. She does those every 6 months. And Scott, not her, she's our ESF capacity builder. They then orchestrate and get people in the room to ask these questions. And these will turn into policy discussions, because we come back and go, and this is where we're at now. What should we be doing? How quick does it take? Or how long does it take to get it going? How much of it should we do? How long can you do it? And what are your gaps? And then do we address the gaps that are going to come up? To talk about it. And you can't fund everything to a high level. For that whole equation of balancing living with risk. And how do you do that? And to what level we do it? And that's the sort of thing that comes out of it. And then we have a process for how we look at capabilities critically with what we call priority assessment, which is we look at the plans, look at the organization, meaning staff structure, funding, and look at then also the equipment that we have, because you can't get equipment to serve things in a lot of cases here. Are we training people the right way? Are we doing exercise? And what Shannon maintains is our, with the after action occurred after Marshall just closed that out, there was over 120 items that needed to be addressed. We worked for over 2 years to get that done. And that is what we call people out of the cycle of failure that most communities face. Look at things critically in the after action phase. Then we, as a community, have the courage to have those hard community conversations, take the criticisms, find the gaps, start addressing them, make the improvements. We've been doing that since I got here in 2010 with the 4 mile fire. So we have continuous improvement. And so we keep climbing a mountain. If we summit, and then we go, oh my God, there's 27 more mountains that want to be on this. I didn't realize they were there. But I see communities that won't do that. They get in there, they do the after action, maybe, don't do the improvement. And then it sets, people leave. They get another disaster 6 years later, and guess what the after action conversations are? Exact same ones they had 6 years ago.
Where are you seeing that? I mean, are you seeing that in our, in Bolton County, in the communities here? Or are you,
talking the broader.
Okay.
Yeah. There's
You
DNA.
go to like national conferences.
Oh yeah, oh yeah. I already speak cross country, and people are struggling with basic stuff that I'm not even, that was years ago. They're like, how'd you get there? They get great policy support, great department involvement, engagement, community support we need, stuff that matters, because it's not really a lot of money we need in emergency management. We need from the departments, from the nonprofits, the private sector, the city, county departments. That's where we build capabilities in disaster emergency management. And then you got your fire and police and all those folks doing that crisis management side, but the stuff we need in recovery and consequence management side, that's where we need all the other folks.
Sounds like you're also talking a little bit about, some of our around the issues of what type of siding we put on our houses, what type of roofing materials we put on our homes, and how we go about planning areas with our plants and things like that around the house, and the structures of what type of like fencing, things like that. And that is that something that you're seeing here communities doing or not in Louisville?
It's a hard thing to say we're just going to work that space. The housing costs so high, and then you want to make them fire resistant. What's the percent that's driving up housing costs? And you balance, okay, so we're going to take care of the fire problem, but now we're creating a housing problem.
Well, we also have many goals like Tree City USA, you get that canopy.
Yeah, so I've got basically an assessment for urban configuration we've worked on that's been rolling out. People are like, this is awesome. And there's things that we are not going to be able to address in the codes, and the things you're talking about are great for the WUI. But if you put houses 8 feet apart, it doesn't matter how they're hard. Now it's an ex-firefighter, so I've been on those calls where it's radiating heat and convecting heat, not embers, that's like comes off. But the right aspects of how we can manage that in the built environment with our suppression capability, the way we manage our natural lands, identify those areas. And we can't do them all, but if we can do a percentage of them, we're safe. And that's where, once again, the mitigation strategies with codes, with building designs, community engagement, community involvement, living with fire safer, those are the things that drive the risk. So,
I'm glad you brought up WUI codes, because that was on my list of questions. So in Lions, we've been talking for a couple of years about potentially putting some bare bone WUI code in place while we're waiting for the state, because we anticipated the state of Colorado was going to have some WUI code. And anybody know what the status of that is, or what are other communities doing? And what I'm hearing is that the WUI code is one thing, but then you also have some zoning and maybe some design standards that intersect with that, but how do you know what those should be if we don't have a WUI code in place?
State's gonna be like 2 years.
2 more
Yeah,
years?
2025 is the.
2025. Is the county or other municipalities doing anything in the interim? in terms of
We're,
WUI code?
our city council asked us to bring something forward, so we're gonna bring something forward in January or February. I'm not exactly sure what that looks like, but some form of a WUI building code.
Mhm.
Um,
Let me give you my card.
sure, I'll give you mine.
I'll just share really from the county, two different pieces.
Yeah.
One, wildfire mitigation tax that Boulder County voters approved last year.
Yes.
That mitigation that you're talking about in the home hardening into the frames, all that you talked about. The defensive space, home hardening. HOAs are a significant issue, so the elected officials in the room that want to get involved in regards to state legislation, this upcoming session that is a conversation around HOA. So, and if people have questions, reach out to me.
If we could find some ways to use some of that money or some state money for incentive programs, I think that would be really huge. Because like rolling right into a regulatory approach is hard for people, but if you can start educate and then incentivize and then roll into, but you know, we did some simple math, like all the miles of cedar fences we have in Louisville at $5,000 per lot. It's like, I can't remember, 20 some $1 million. We don't have that kind of money.
And that's the
So
first
some thinking there, yeah.
And that's the first area that we've, in Superior, we've been able to, a certain neighborhood, as for a non-flammable fencing on one of these open spaces, which was really hit by martial fire really quickly. And so that ordinance was passed recently, which is kind of a big deal for us. Some of the first movements that we've been able to traction.
And some of it's not necessarily like all the fence needs to be fireproof, but it's, from what I understand, it's like if you can take that 5 foot between the house and the fence and make that fireproof, minimize that wick, it's something that I understand is a big deal. So, it's like maybe some little steps that we could move into first.
Right, the fencing that touches the house.
Yeah.
And we did do that.
Yeah, we did.
We're gonna have some more data for you too to review, because it's just not stopping the house. That's the fire. How do we get time to that?
Yeah.
And we've been doing some critical assessment on that, some recent technology we purchased here in the city of county. And we're able to start looking at things, integrated fire behavior modeling with evacuation traffic. And intersect of that, some conversation.
Two comments, I guess. One is, can we get copies of our slides?
Absolutely.
Okay. Second, I want to thank this whole group for everything that they do for safety in the county. I'm wondering if there is redundancy for this organization. So if something were to happen to this room, who would be in charge of organizing all these things?
So 2 layers to that. The first one is we have a bug out procedure. We use that during COVID, during the middle of a fire, got a wildland. And it happened, and we had then a civil, we had a threat come through, there could be some civil activity going around this area. And we were worried, and they said there's no one who can protect the EOC file. So I made the decision to evacuate the building and move over to Longmont to the Parks and Open Space building and set up our EOC there. So we have the ability to do that. We also had a 1983 plan for those that were alive back then. It was like to do things I'm old enough to know that is that we ran a lot of disasters without all this technology. A little slower, but we got it done. So we have a 1983 plan. If we use all the technology, we've had that happen before. And then if we need to, we have agreements with other counties. So if you go to Lori Hodgins' shop up in Loveland, go there, go to Adams County, their shop, you go to Jeffco. And we have those agreements we can shift over from further away, but we can still maintain the continuity. And we have that ability to do it.
Okay. Great.
In my mind, this 20 was going to go like in 20 minutes. There's no way. I was just going to. So I blame myself in it. So
Everything you said so far tonight has been ridiculous.
So I apologize for running over there, but.
That was a good word.
I don't wanna call it-
We love you, Mike. We love you, Mike.
The goal really is that I want to stress is those things are gonna happen in our communities. So the question is, is your community positioned to deal with these things and develop these capabilities and manage this? And if the answer is, wow, I don't know, then that's where then the future discussion goes and either opens the door for, and we've had talks like, wouldn't it be nice if we were more integrated in the way we do emergency management, disaster management at the county? That's more sustainable, more integrated, and maximizes and leverages staff instead of recreating 5 EOCs in the county. Is it better kind of look like the example that Boulder and the county came with this integrated agreement? And being able to cost share that, resource it away, put it in a position. I'll be retired someday soon. I've been a resident of the county for 30 years. I'm going to continue to be a resident of the county. I'd like to know that our disaster management system is sustainable and is going to be working like a live in Longmont. So, that to me is when I look at it from my position, to be honest, I look to the future and I see some risk there and some vulnerability around that. Because when I leave, I don't take a lot of vacations, so I can tell you that. I hang out all the time with electronic leashes on, so, and I haven't missed a disaster yet in this county since 2010. Hope you can find another person to do that. I don't know if staff wants to do that, but that's the sort of sustainable piece. It's the structure, it's the personnel thing, it's all that stuff moving forward. Because I was also a first responder in this county. There was a day where we would run these disasters and we didn't care if the EOC did that because it didn't bring the. It's all us. And we're in a position now is that we'll take that experience and say, I know what we need to build. And I think I'd like to say that most times disaster people can't think of an EOC not being stood up and taking action for a period of time, which is a huge shift from where we were back in 2003 of City Boulevard. So on that note, any other comments? Anything, please. I'm dehydrated, I'm not ready to just like. But hopefully it got you thinking. It was a little sort of advertising around, but really is that, we need to bring you what the environment is. We bring you the issues. We're here to execute your direction, but this is where been in government a long time in my life, 41 years now. And what I rely heavily on is the wisdom of the elected officials and senior leadership. And I respect everyone that we have in positions, always have, so they're great to work with. And so we bring this to you to have those discussions and wisdom you choose. There's no rebuking it if it doesn't come out the way I like it or the way I like it. We will use the cards we dealt, because we have a lot of great cards here. We do really well. And we will still execute and dedicate in that space and do what best we can with what we got.
Thank you. Mike, thank you. So get into your whole team and the staff and all the support staff that is here too, that show up and respond and continue to work and do all the hours and all the things that we're being talked about. So I fits a little, and one piece I want people to think about as far as consortium members. This might be something we want to talk about a little bit more in depth in 2024. So I'm just want to leave that out there for you about some of these decisions right now. We have about half an hour, and so we can stand up and take a little bit of a break, or we can just keep moving and maybe leave a few minutes early. So really quick. I heard the second one. Yeah. Second one. Okay. We'll just keep moving if anybody needs to take care of anything at all, and there's still some snacks and stuff. Question.
A comment, really. I'd love if we could I'd suggest that we set up a follow-up to this. I really think that this county is better positioned than most or all in Colorado, but having a follow-up conversation to this about how we can better collaborate, I think that would be really beneficial to all of our organizations and communities. So in 24 early, having some kind of a follow-up conversation, I would fully support that.
That's great. I appreciate that. And we have at Consortium of Cities done and started a lot of regional work, and it doesn't have to be just with consortium. We could open it up and have that conversation in a larger room with more electives as well. So consortium members, if you want to think about that, maybe send a note to me or to Mark in the next few weeks as we start talking about 2024 plans.
Kind of follow up on what Jeff said. great presentation. Unfortunately, we've lost most of our time because we needed the background in order to generate a lot of the conversation we want to have. You know, the other thing was we changed the meeting. Unfortunately, I lost the two representatives from the town of Superior who would be most educated because they had conflict. And so I really like Jeff's idea of let's have a follow-up on this. And, you know, I'm thinking half-day session, don't do it at night. It tends to be a problem for all of the electeds. Maybe we should do it on a Saturday if we're even in advance. But, you know, several of our members wanted to be able to come tonight. And they could not because we had a delay in schedule. So I do think it is critical that we work together, you know, Bloomfield and Superior and Boulder County work together because we happen to at the same time. But next time it might not be our three communities. It might be Erie and Longmont and, you know, Lafayette. So we really should be able to sit down together and just get to know each other. You know, I think the other piece for me is, and I mentioned it to Allison, when we don't have everybody in the room, it makes a difference. And I know we have a lot of people on our Consortium of Cities meetings that attend remotely, but the way we build the relationships is to be in the room together. And so hopefully we could figure out a way to do it so that we could all be in and build relationships together too. So, and just live through it in Superior and continue to live through it. You know, we've gotten a lot closer to most. We weren't not close before, but we're way closer now than we were before this because we had to work together on a common problem. So, you know, thank you so much for the presentation. It was wonderful. And I learned a lot because I was not on the board at the time that the fire happened. But I learned a lot tonight. But I think there's value to what we were talking about. But my whole thing was, we cannot do this in 2 hours. We cannot be effective at it.
To your
Thank
point,
you.
you know, that's why I think it's important that some of us attend these things like National League of Cities and stuff like that, where we have these opportunities to have these sit down discussions with each other, that sort of thing. So I encourage, you know, other council members to do that because that's where you get that sort of one-on-one and to get to know each other if you can't get it through this type of situation.
So one of the people that was not here tonight from Superior is in Maui right now, working with the officials on Maui. So, you know, obviously more important that she be there. She is very knowledgeable and valuable to have in the room. So we're never not going to have those conflicts, but you learn when you go and help others. So anyway, that was just my point. I think this is an important discussion. We should not stop tonight.
Agreed. And we've got another vote on mine saying yes. So.
Patient, you know, we can't just put time on slides that, you know, the whole time. So I think to your point of spending more time on it, I could see maybe more stuff. Because I don't know that, you know, it is hard for us to all carve out a huge amount of time.
That's great. Thank you. It's good feedback. And I do want to just acknowledge that Mike Hart has done this presentation early last year, I think, with a big room of elected officials. And so as we have our different election cycles and folks move in and out, I think it's a continual commitment that he's made.
You can sign these later.
No, that's, so we'll talk about it. And I do want to also just, for folks who aren't in the room, some of our fellow council folks have day jobs. And so we're always going to have a conflict and they work through that. So, great. Thank you. And if folks have additional feedback, as I shared with him, Mark's going to send the slides out to everybody. So let's continue on our just consortium meeting, and we'll go through some of these questions together later. So we update on regional minimum wage.
I will do my best. So let's see, we put out an RFP for a financial assistance. And to
Just last night.
support that financially, yes, so thank you. Um, and we are working on sort of releasing an engagement strategy that would be sort of each municipality's responsibility to carry out, but a strategy for what that includes, what those meetings look like, kind of a foundational background for everyone to sort of start those conversations from.
Right. That sounds great, thank you. A couple pieces, go ahead.
I was just gonna say, and to that point, there'll be more information to share by the February consortium meeting. So perhaps at that meeting, there can be a little bit more of a robust update on where that is. Yeah, because that work is in process. RFPs have been put out and you'll know a lot more in a couple months.
And I don't want to make an assumption because we asked in 2022 if Councilman wanted to be the lead of that subcommittee. Are you thinking you'll have capacity in 2024, or is that something we might need to be working on in the next 30 days to find a replacement? For our council,
Out of our discussion around boards and committees we're going to stay with. I'm interested in staying with this group, but
so maybe that'll be something that we need to be talking about as well. And the reason I asked that was, one, I don't want to make any assumptions. Two, we'd love to have you stay on. And also, I'm curious if it would be helpful to you to have our newer city and town reps meet with you before February, or meet with the lead before February, so that you know who's on board for 2025. What I don't want to do is have the full fourth quarter move away and then have folks stand on their diocese and say that they don't have enough time to meet 2025. I don't want us to lose any time for cities and towns who are committed to take care of workers with a minimum wage in that one way.
no, I think that's really smart, and I think it would be great to kind of have not as part of the itself, but to start a kind of an offline meeting again. And we could especially for the cities who are signed on. Prepare kind of to discuss once the elected side how to make sure we're all ready.
Okay, I think that's great. Do you know Boulder, whoever is going to speak on Boulder's behalf, is Taylor set up to get staff support person for 2024? Someone, if maybe that's the contact for.
Yeah, she is Taylor Lyman. Roles from the city manager's office, our climate initiatives department. So she has a new job. So
I was planning on putting whatever pressure I can manage towards making sure that she can stay.
We'd be happy to help with the pressure.
So
Same.
we've said at least for the next 6 months, she's still going to be that staff. And then we start to the work plan as then you figure out if there's capacity there. Or it's special projects on top of the work, or if she needs to train from her. We'll keep on.
Feedback, she's doing a great job, just so you know.
So just so everybody and our virtual folks as well are clear, who should they be letting know if they want to be part of that subcommittee on living wage from a regional perspective, or if they need to update, kind of know where they are as far as moving forward.
For elected, you know.
Okay. All right, so for folks on
If there's staff people.
okay.
I'll include him.
Awesome, thank you. for leading that work. 9 News is covering the regional minimum wage conversation this evening. Anybody who's interested? Let's see here. I think that we are to the community announcement portion. So we keep talking about we're going to get a bus and move ourselves from party to party, from town to city. We have not done that yet.
This doesn't count?
Well, this is. Yeah. They're bus hoppers. All right. Mayor Rogan, what do you have for us?
Well, our holiday parade was last weekend, so this is just a week too late. But it was super fun. Y'all should come next year. It's the best parade in the state. Aaron, I know.
Except for Louisville.
Except for Louisville. They usually start the day, ours is at night. So they're like, oh, it is?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Well, we'll let everybody know next year.
Separate you guys.
So I don't. Yes.
Longmont has a parade of lights this Saturday, and on Friday they have kind of a tree lighting ceremony with fireworks in Roosevelt Park, and of course they have their outdoor ice skating rink going. So fully in the spirit.
Good, thank you. Anyone?
Just Louisville has a new mayor. Chris Lay, he's been a member of council for 12 years. It's been a long time. Yeah, and so now he's stepped up to mayor and had his first meeting last night.
No, 28th.
Well, but that was
Yeah, last night.
first full official meeting. Yeah, and he's doing a great job. And our ice skating rink is also open now, down by the Steinbach Pavilion.
Of our council for tomorrow.
Oh,
Members.
great. What time is that? 5 p.m. Yeah.
And then finish it and check.
I think that was like a different.
Excellent. Okay. I think that's it. I appreciate everybody. Thank you, staff. All the collective, we sign up to do this. Staff is not, so we appreciate being.
You.
Everybody online, thank